The headline screamed, a bold declaration challenging the very nature of power. "Sit down, Donald," it demanded, claiming a humiliation witnessed by millions. This isn't just a clickbait title, it's a promise, a moment when the seemingly unshakable facade of one of the world's most polarizing figures cracked, exposed by the quiet, surgical precision of an unexpected voice. A moment that didn't just silence a room, but reverberated across a nation, forcing a reckoning with what it truly means to command respect. But to truly grasp the magnitude of how a single, quiet sentence could shatter an illusion of invincibility, we must first rewind to the suffocating silence before the storm, the tension so thick you could taste it. The air in the Dallas studio wasn't just tense, it was vibrating, a low hum of anticipation that had nothing to do with excitement and everything to do with foreboding. Seasoned anchors clutched their note cards a little too tightly, producers barked sharp, urgent hand signals from behind the cameras, and the carefully selected audience, despite their best efforts to appear composed, were practically perched on the edge of their seats. It was just past 8 p.m. in Dallas, Texas, and a national town hall event was airing live, unfiltered, across multiple networks. No teleprompters, no safety nets. On one side of the circular table sat President Donald Trump, flanked by two conservative analysts, their faces set in expressions of practiced agreement. Across from them, a small group of Democrats, among them a relatively new face to the national stage, Representative Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine was quiet at first, her gaze steady, taking in the scene. She wasn't there to add to the noise, to engage in the typical political theatre of shouting matches and recycled talking points. She was there to speak when it truly mattered, to inject a dose of reality when the rhetoric spiraled into absurdity. About 35 minutes into a heated exchange on leadership and accountability, a conversation that was veering wildly off course, Trump, ever the provocateur, aimed his shot directly at her. His eyes, fixed on Jasmine, held that familiar glint of condescending challenge. Maybe if some of these young politicians stopped trying to go viral and started learning their place, he drawled, his voice dripping with dismissiveness, this country wouldn't be in such a mess. The words hung in the air, a thinly veiled jab, clearly meant to shut down, to belittle, to put a perceived upstart firmly in line. There it was. He didn't have to say her name. Everyone in the room, and millions watching at home, knew exactly who he was talking about. A few uncomfortable, nervous laughs rippled through the audience. The moderator, a veteran journalist known for her ability to navigate chaotic interviews, attempted a pivot, sensing the volatile shift. But it was too late. Before she could even finish her sentence, a hand, steady and deliberate, rose from Jasmine Crockett's side of the table. A silent signal. This was not over. What followed wasn't a mere interjection, it was a precisely aimed strike, delivered with a calm that would prove more devastating than any shout, a silence so profound it roared across the nation. Her voice was calm, firm, a stark contrast to the aggressive bluster that had just preceded it. The lack of a raised tone, the absence of any visible tremor, only magnified the sting of her words. She locked eyes with Donald Trump, not in defiance, but in a quiet assertion of undeniable truth. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice cutting through the remaining nervous laughter like a razor. "I know you're used to people clapping for nonsense, but respect isn't handed out based on age or title. It's earned, and given your record, you might want to sit this one out." The words hung in the air. For a full 4 seconds, the studio was gripped by a profound, almost sacred silence. It wasn't the quiet of attentiveness, it was the quiet of raw, collective shock. 4 seconds that felt like 10, stretching into an eternity where every breath was held, every glance frozen. Then came the gasp, audible, raw, caught by the sensitive microphones. A whispered, "Whoa!" escaped someone's lips, quickly stifled. The cameras, usually darting, seemed to settle, capturing every wide eye, every tightened lip, every subtle shift in the room. And then the most telling detail of all, Donald Trump, the man known for his immediate, often brutal counterpunches, was silent. He blinked, once, twice. His gaze, usually so piercing, seemed to lose its focus for a fleeting moment. He reached for a glass of water on the table, his hand moving with an uncharacteristic hesitation. He took a sip, then another, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for a familiar lifeline. There was no immediate retort, no dismissive nickname, no quick pivot to attack. For once, his arsenal of verbal weaponry seemed to have failed him. That alone, his blinking, his fumbling, his visible discomfiture, was enough to make the moment unforgettable. It was a clear, undeniable sign that his usual tactics had failed, that his carefully cultivated image of invincibility had been, for just a few precious seconds, visibly undone. The humiliation was palpable, a quiet victory delivered not with a shout, but with the chilling force of unadorned truth. But who was this woman who dared to challenge the unchallenged, and what in her past forged the steel in her voice, allowing her to deliver such a precise, public rebuke? Her story, steeped in resilience and an unwavering commitment to truth, reveals the deep roots of her extraordinary courage. Before this explosive moment, for most Americans outside Texas, the name Jasmine Crockett meant little. Yet to the people of the 30th Congressional District, she was a known entity, a relentless fighter with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. Her public profile might have been nascent on the national stage, but her roots ran deep, nurtured in the fertile, often challenging, ground of everyday struggle and a fierce commitment to justice. She wasn't an overnight sensation, she was a meticulously crafted force, honed by years of unwavering dedication. Her path to power wasn't paved by prestigious think tanks or high-dollar fundraisers. Instead, it was forged in the gritty reality of courtrooms, bustling community centers, and countless late nights in South Dallas, taking on pro bono cases for those the system had cornered and forgotten. Born in Shreveport, Louisiana, her childhood was a masterclass in honest struggle, watching her mother navigate demanding nursing shifts and her father mend broken-down cars in a rented garage. Life was tough, but it was real, and it instilled a profound sense of discipline early on. She learned the value of hard work, not from textbooks, but from the calloused hands of her parents, from the quiet sacrifices they made to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. There was a singular defining rule in young Jasmine's household, one that burned itself into her character, shaping her ambitions from a tender age. The only time she ever got grounded was for not speaking up when she knew someone else was lying. This wasn't just a household rule, it was a creed. It became the bedrock of her moral compass, teaching her the profound weight of silence in the face of deceit. By the tender age of 15, her destiny was sealed. She would become a lawyer. Not for the allure of money or prestige, not for the grandstanding of courtroom drama, but for a far more profound purpose. "I want to be the person in the room who says, 'Hold on, that's not right,'" she declared during a high school civics class, her voice quiet but firm. She wasn't the loudest student, but when she spoke, her peers and teachers alike listened, sensing an innate conviction behind her words. Her law school years at the University of Houston were a testament to this unwavering conviction, as she deliberately bypassed lucrative corporate internships to work with criminal defense attorneys and advocacy groups, volunteering in overcrowded jails and representing clients no one else would touch. Her reputation as someone who didn't flinch when facing off with judges twice her age was already solidified, a quiet legend among her peers long before she even opened her own practice. She cultivated a methodical approach to her work, dissecting arguments, exposing fallacies, and always returning to the core truth, no matter how uncomfortable it made others feel. So when the opportunity arose in 2019 to run for a local representative seat, despite the political establishment dismissing her chances as a long shot against a well-funded incumbent, she seized it. She didn't have the biggest war chest, but she had the biggest heart for the people she aimed to represent. She knocked on doors, held town halls in community centers, and spoke plainly, eschewing political jargon. and she won by over 10 points, a clear mandate from a district hungry for authenticity. She carried that same unwavering, unbought authenticity to Austin, the state capital, making immediate waves by challenging party leaders and refusing to be silenced in committee hearings, even when it meant standing alone. Her national debut in 2022, challenging a controversial education bill that disproportionately affected her constituents, saw her calmly dissecting fine print, citing obscure statutes, and exposing loopholes, while the bill's bewildered author squirmed under her precise questioning, footage that quickly became internet gold, circulated by advocacy groups. But for Jasmine, this wasn't about internet fame. It was about people's lives, about protecting the vulnerable. Therefore, when she found herself on that national town hall stage, facing down one of the most powerful and media-savvy figures in the world, she wasn't seeking ratings or another viral moment. She didn't prepare zingers or wear bright colors for the camera. She showed up because her district asked her to keep showing up, to keep fighting for them, to be their voice in rooms where they were routinely ignored. And when Donald Trump, in his predictable fashion, tried to diminish her with a jab about learning her place, her response wasn't that of a media personality or a partisan Democrat looking for a soundbite. It was the raw, unadulterated reaction of the girl who once got grounded for staying quiet during a lie. In a room built for performance and power, she simply stayed herself, remained true to the values instilled in her from childhood, and in doing so laid bare his assumptions, humiliated him not with anger or a loud retort, but with an unassailable truth that resonated deep within the collective consciousness of a nation. The truth she delivered, calm and precise, ignited a firestorm far beyond the studio, bringing both adoration and ominous shadows that would test her resolve against a growing tide of praise and hostility. Within mere seconds of that unforgettable exchange, the internet erupted. It was a digital explosion, a volcanic spew of clips, GIFs, and memes that appeared seemingly out of thin air. Twitter became a maelstrom of activity, declared by some, within moments, as nothing less than the moment Gen Z found its voice in Congress. They weren't wrong. The studio hadn't even finished the segment before the broader world was in a frenzy. Podcasts dropped emergency episodes, their hosts scrambling to dissect the audacity of the moment. Late-night comedians, sensing the zeitgeist, quickly incorporated riffs on the sheer impact of Jasmine's quiet power. Cable news networks, notorious for their rapid-fire replays, sliced into their regular programming to show the exchange again and again, dissecting it frame by frame, analyzing every blink, every shift in posture, every nuanced reaction. People who hadn't even tuned into the town hall were scrambling for clips, desperate to witness the viral sensation firsthand. Her phone, once a mere tool for communication, transformed into a relentless torrent of notifications, a buzzing, vibrating extension of the national conversation. Texts poured in from numbers she hadn't saved. Friends, family, former law school professors, old college roommates, all expressing a mix of awe and fervent support. But amidst the digital applause, a darker, more sinister current began to emerge, a chilling undercurrent that would soon threaten to overwhelm. This wasn't just attention, this was something seismic. Screenshots began circulating online, filled with raw, unbridled rage, veiled threats and coded language, all explicitly targeting her. By the next morning, 6 a.m., the clip of Jasmine's comeback had already soared past 11 million views across TikTok and X, a dizzying ascent that marked it as one of the fastest-spreading political moments of the year. Just 2.5 hours later, CNN, sensing the zeitgeist, booked her for a prime-time interview, recognizing the profound resonance of the moment she had created. By noon, 2 different prominent think tanks had published their reaction pieces. One unequivocally lauded her for flipping the old power script and redefining political decorum, while the other, predictably and vehemently, accused her of grandstanding for social currency,